Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sound Advice with Alexis Marin. That's me. I'm Alexis Marin. I am a registered drama therapist, a life coach, and a speaker. A couple months back, I made a video about grief. And inside of that, I was talking about the difference between pain and suffering. And I was working with a quote that said the following: "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional." Suffering is what happens when pain is not acknowledged. So for example, let's say that you injure your knee and that is a pain point for you. If you don't do anything about it, if you don't do anything to acknowledge the pain, you're probably going to continue to walk on it. It's going to get swollen, it's going to get worse, and then every day you're going to suffer because you have not acknowledged the pain to begin with and you have not done anything to address the pain. Suffering is not something that just happens with physical pain. Actually, more likely, suffering is something that happens with emotional pain. When we don't take the time to sit down and acknowledge a painful experience, it can be incredibly upsetting to ourselves and to our psyche, and we start to suffer. And we can also cause suffering in others when we refuse to or cannot see potentially a painful experience or a pain point for somebody else in our lives. I'm going to add on another line to that quote: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and avoidance is the root of suffering. We don't like to suffer. We also don't like pain. So as human beings, we tend to do all that we can to avoid that feeling, to avoid suffering, to avoid conflict. And we do that by relying on 4 different tactics to avoid suffering. The 4 different tactics are to distract, to opt out or withdraw, to numb out with substances, or to overthink a situation. To distract yourself from suffering can look like anything from spending hours on the internet looking up videos and going down a rabbit hole, binge watching a television show. Sometimes it can even be something that you would consider healthy, like reading a book, or really diving into some topic that you're interested in. But that takes you sometimes out of the present moment. You're distracting yourself away from being mindful because you're either placing yourself into a story or looking at some type of fantasy or allowing yourself to go into a rabbit hole. That's distraction. To opt out or to withdraw basically means to pretend as though the pain point or the suffering or the problem just isn't even there. We're just going to avoid it completely. So we're not going to look at it at all, not going to acknowledge it, just going to basically kind of put it in a box somewhere as if it never existed, and somehow we think that we have some type of peace around that because if you don't acknowledge it, it's not there. To numb out with substances sounds pretty obvious. It can be relying on drugs, alcohol. It can also be food, other things that you potentially put into your body to numb out. And you can also numb out with activities. Sometimes you can work out to the point of exhaustion, or you can work out to the point where you actually cause more pain in yourself because you are just trying to keep your body so active and so busy that you don't start thinking about whatever is going on. And then lastly, to overthink something would be the opposite of that, would be to sit down and ruminate about every possible way that you could handle a conversation. What are you going to do about this? What does this avenue look like? If I did A, what does B look like? If I went all the way from A to Z, what does that look like? And that just gets incredibly exhausting. So if you find that you are at a moment in your life where you feel like you may be employing one of these avoidance tactics, I would really encourage you to sit down and to ask yourself, what do you think the pain point might be? And have you actually addressed it yet? Have you done any of the positive things to sit down and to really acknowledge to yourself that something is hurting? And have you asked for help? Maybe that's a part of what you need to do, is not just acknowledge it to yourself, but say to somebody else, hey, this is something that I'm experiencing, and this is really hurtful, whether that person is involved in that pain point or not. If you find yourself using distraction, opting out, overthinking, or numbing out with substances, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes we get to a point where maybe we have been processing something that's incredibly hard for such a long time that every once in a while we need to give ourselves permission to check out. But I want to make sure that if you're using any of those avoidance tactics or techniques, it really is because you have been doing the work and you just need to be able to step away from that for a moment with some type of a positive distraction. Okay? So, my charge to you is to think about, do you have a pain point? Have you acknowledged it in your life? Or are you avoiding it, or is somebody else avoiding it? And how are you suffering? And what are you doing to avoid it? Distract, opt out, overthink, or numb with substances. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful to you. If you would like more information from me, you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel here, or you can visit me on my website at www.alexismarin.com, where I have other resources and blogs and videos that you can watch. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care.